Greetings and welcome to another episode of Canadian History Ehx. Before I start, if you'd like to support my podcast and my YouTube channel of Canadian History Ehx, you can for $3 a month. Just go to patreon.com/CanadaEHX. Scotland may have the Loch Ness Monster, but Canada has its own famous sea creature. And if you have ever been to the Okanagan, you know all about the Ogopogo, which lives in Okanagan Lake. Now this video is not about whether or not the Ogopogo exists, nor the current sightings of it, but mostly the history of the creature and the stories around it. So let's take a look at the great Ogopogo. Okanagan Lake is the largest of 5 interconnected freshwater fjord lakes in the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia. The first people to inhabit the region were the Okanagan people, and the lake is named for them. The lake itself dates back to 10,000 years ago when it was formed by melting glaciers. The name Ogopogo and its origins aren't quite clear. Apparently, the name was first heard in an English music hall song heard in the city of Vernon, with the lyrics going as such. His mother was an earwig, his father was a whale, a little bit of head, a hardly a tail, and Ogopogo was his name. Here's a section of that song.
When I said to that quaint old chap, why do you carry that big thing of perhaps a butterfly net and rusty gum? He replied, listen here, my son, I'm looking for the Ogopogo, the funny little Ogopogo. His mother was a pollywog, his father was a whale. I'm going to put a little bit of salt on his tail. I want to find the Ogopogo while he's playing on his old banjo. I just want to take him back home where I'll take him, and then I will make him the sensation in a Broadway show.
The origin of the Ogopogo dates back to the indigenous stories of the area who called the creature Nataka, and called it an evil supernatural entity with great power and ill intent. The name itself translates as water demon or water god, and sacred creature of the water. In indigenous stories, the creature demanded a live sacrifice in order to cross the lake properly. For centuries, indigenous would sacrifice small animals before going into the water. One story says that Chief Tim Basket rejected the stories and the existence of the creature. He entered the lake with his family just as a long tail came up and sucked everyone to the bottom of the lake. The indigenous story said that the creature could create fierce storms with his tail. Today, it is believed that the indigenous of the Okanagan Valley were not referring to a literal lake monster like Ogopogo, but instead a legendary water spirit. According to folklore, the Ogopogo lives in caves under Rattlesnake Island. The people who say they have seen the creature state that it is multi-humped with green, black, brown, or gray skin and the head of a snake, although sometimes it's described as having the head of a sheep, horse, seal, or alligator. Some say that it has ears and horns, others say that it does not. By the time Europeans arrived, they too would relate their own stories about the creature. One settler named John McDougall said that his horses were taken by the creature and he nearly lost his canoe as well. In 1872, the first detailed account from a European settler would be courtesy of Susan Allison, the first European woman to live in the region, where she established a long-term friendly relationship with the indigenous. There would be scatterings of sightings by various people over the next century, but in 1968, Art Folden was driving on Highway 97 when he saw something moving in the lake. He filmed what he saw, which was estimated to be 300 yards offshore. Subsequent investigations found that it was likely closer to shore and most likely an animal that size was overestimated. In the 1980s, a local tourism agency offered a cash reward for a proven sighting of the Ogopogo. Greenpeace announced that the Ogopogo had to be filmed, not captured, as it was an endangered species. Around the same time, 50 tourists said they saw the Ogopogo for about 45 minutes off a beach near Kelowna. Analysis of the 8mm film of the incident suggests that it was likely a pair of otters. In 1991, an expedition took place using a remotely operated vehicle and miniature submarine to see if the Ogopogo could be found. The pilot took the vehicle to a depth of 840 feet along the lake bottom at the deepest spot, and no Ogopogo nor any carcasses or bones were found. In 2011, a cell phone video captured dark shapes in the water, But the video quality is poor and the camera is shaking. Analysis of the video found that it was not one long object, but two shorter objects floating next to each other, and were most likely floating logs. Today, the Ogopogo is celebrated in the Okanagan area and in Canada. A Canada Post stamp exists with the likeness of the Ogopogo, and in 1960, an Ogopogo statue was created for the city of Kelowna that sits at the shores of Lake Okanagan. Many tourist shops in the Okanagan sell t-shirts, hats, mugs, and plush toys that feature the image of the Ogopogo. I hope you enjoyed that quick little look at the Ogopogo and the history around it. If you did, please give a like and maybe comment and share if you really enjoyed the video. You can reach me at craig@canadaehx.com. You can find hundreds of articles on my website at canadaehx.com. And you can listen to my podcast where I release 3 episodes a week. Just look for Canadian History Ehx on all podcast platforms. You can also support the podcast by going to Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/CanadaEHX, just like all of these wonderful people have.